to go, history. Life is a journey, being part of it is everything. Hello, my name is Jessica. Welcome to episode 8 of my historical travel podcast, Voyage to Go History, where I take you on the most adventurous journeys from the past that continue to shape our view of the world today. In this true story, 17-year-old German Georg Forster travels around the world with his father, a naturalist in the 18th century, aboard a sailing ship under the command of James Cook. Georg's travel narrative is written in the language of the 18th century. To make it more understandable, I have largely translated it into modern language. His knowledge is that of the late 18th century, so I will place some of his statements in context and provide additional information. What happened in the last episode?
In the last episode, the crew departed Table Bay and ventured into the uncharted southern waters. Battling fierce storms and biting cold, they faced relentless challenges as waves crashed over the ship and icy winds froze even their drinking water. The crew observed albatrosses, petrels, and penguins, along with patches of floating seaweed, hints of nearby land that fueled their hope. As they ventured deeper into the Indian Ocean, they encountered massive icebergs, the first signs of the icy southern latitudes. These towering ice islands, some over 800 meters long, revealed the harsh reality of their journey and demonstrated the chilling influence of the southern seas. Observing snow petrels, rare storm petrels, and other bird species, they marveled at nature's resilience in such inhospitable conditions. The crew relied on their strength, wit, and the Admiralty's provisions to endure the bitter cold. Despite the hardships, their spirit remained intact, bolstered by scientific curiosity and the grandeur of the icy landscapes. Their journey into the unknown was a test of endurance and a quest for discovery, pushing the limits of human exploration in the 18th century.
Thursday, December 10th, 1772, Indian Ocean.
The first block of ice they saw was enormous, requiring them to navigate around it quickly. Another block of similar size appeared directly in their path, while a third, about 3.7 kilometers away, loomed like a white promontory or chalk cliff. Later that afternoon, they passed a vast rectangular mass of ice, approximately 610 meters long, 122 meters wide, and at least twice as high as their tallest mainmast, nearly 61 meters tall. Based on hydrostatic principles, the visible part of an ice mass represents only 1/10 of its total size. This calculation suggested that the block extended 549 meters beneath the water, with an overall height of 610 meters. Its volume was estimated at 45.7 million cubic meters. These massive ice formations moved very slowly, if at all. Since the majority of their mass was submerged, wind and waves had little effect on them. Ocean currents were likely the primary force driving their movement, albeit at a speed no faster than approximately 3.7 kilometers per day. The crew speculated about the origins of the ice. Initially, they assumed it came from land. However, after completing their circumnavigation without discovering a southern continent, they concluded that the ice likely formed directly in the open sea. This theory was supported by experiments confirming that seawater could freeze, producing fresh water upon thawing. The drifting ice revealed differences between the northern and southern hemispheres. Although they were in mid-December, corresponding to June in the northern hemisphere, they encountered icebergs at latitudes equivalent to London's. This disparity was attributed to the lack of significant land masses in the southern hemisphere, where the sea absorbed sunlight rather than reflecting it as land does in the north. On December 11th, they passed another vast ice island, about 800 meters long. As they neared the ice, the thermometer on deck dropped from 41 degrees Fahrenheit to 37.5 degrees Fahrenheit, only to rise back to 41 degrees Fahrenheit after passing. The crew noted the chilling effect of the ice on the surrounding air. Despite the frigid conditions, their ships were surrounded by storm petrels, albatrosses, and penguins. One particular storm petrel, white with a black beak and bluish feet, circled the ice masses. The crew dubbed it the snow petrel, considering it a herald of ice. By December 13th, the number of icebergs increased. That afternoon, they spotted about 20 significant formations, one covered in black spots, possibly seals or seabirds. They sounded the depth with a 275-meter line, but found no bottom. The crew grew eager, hoping to find land, as they were near the latitude where Captain Lozier Bouvet claimed to have discovered Cape Circumcision. Mistaking clouds or snow-covered icebergs for mountains, the crew repeatedly called out "land," only to be disappointed.
On January 1st, 1739, French explorer Jean-Baptiste Charles Bouvet de Lozier sighted an icy coastline in the South Atlantic, naming it Cap Circoncision, after the feast of the circumcision. Bouvet could not land due to fog, rough seas, and pack ice. The location was recorded near 45 degrees south and 4 degrees east, but later expeditions struggled to confirm the discovery. It is now believed Bouvet may have seen Bouvet Island, a remote, ice-covered volcanic island slightly off his reported coordinates. Bouvet's account spurred further exploration of the southern oceans, influencing voyages like James Cook's. Today, Bouvet Island is a Norwegian territory and a symbol of early maritime exploration.
On December 14th, the lieutenant, fueled by Bouvet's accounts, repeatedly climbed the mast, convinced he saw land. At 6 a.m., he confidently reported land to the captain, which turned out to be another enormous ice field surrounded by countless icebergs. Even seasoned officers were fooled by the mirage, and it wasn't until Captain Cook sailed over the same coordinates in February 1775 that it was confirmed no land existed. The region teemed with penguins, pintails, petrels, and whales, offering a rare glimpse of life amidst the icy desolation. Some whales appeared shorter but much bulkier than usual, with a distinctive flesh-colored hue. Despite the persistent cold, the crew continued to encounter wildlife, even as the thermometer hovered around freezing, with daytime highs barely reaching 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Tuesday, December 15th, Indian Ocean.
They ventured into a new ice field where some crew members once again mistakenly thought they saw land. Heavy snow fell overnight, and the calm seas allowed for further investigations. Mr. Wales and Georg's father seized the opportunity to conduct experiments on the sea's temperature at various depths from a small boat. While they were occupied, the fog grew so thick that both ships lost sight of each other. One can easily imagine how they must have felt. In a small boat, which unfortunately had neither mast nor sail, only 2 oars, they found themselves on the vast ocean, far from any inhabited coast, surrounded by ice on all sides, and without provisions. Their situation was terrifying in itself, made even more dreadful by the thought of what the future might hold. Amid constant shouting, they rowed aimlessly, sometimes in one direction, sometimes in another, but it was all in vain. Everything around them was eerily silent, and the dense fog limited their visibility to barely the length of the boat. In this uncertainty, they decided it was best to stay in one place, hoping that the stillness of the sea would keep the ships from drifting too far apart. Finally, they heard a bell ringing in the distance. To their ears, it was heavenly music. They immediately rowed towards the sound, and after persistent calling, they finally received an answer from the Adventure. They hurried aboard, overjoyed to have escaped the apparent danger of a slow and dreadful death. Once on board the Adventure, they fired a cannon as a signal. When the response shot revealed that the Resolution was so close that both ships could communicate, they returned to their boat and made their way back to their damp bunks and shabby cabins, which now felt twice as valuable as before. This incident illustrates how countless dangers await seafarers and how often peril arises where it is least expected. Yet it also shows how Providence constantly watches over our fate. Providence is visible not only during storms, guiding us safely through hidden reefs and sandbanks, or saving us from the wrath of waves and fire, but also in those smaller, less conspicuous moments. Such events, though often unnoticed or quickly forgotten by travelers and readers once they end happily, deserve recognition and reverence as part of life's guiding hand. As they now encountered solid, large ice fields blocking their path southward, they could no longer advance in that direction. Despite repeated attempts to carve a path through the dense ice, all efforts proved futile. Consequently, they altered their course and steered eastward, often passing through extensive stretches of broken ice known to northern sailors as pack ice. Heavy hail and snow showers constantly darkened the sky, granting only fleeting glimpses of the sun's invigorating light. Around them, countless icebergs rose in every direction, becoming as familiar and commonplace as clouds in the sea. The sheer number of these ice masses prompted continuous observations, which they later had opportunities to confirm or revise through extended acquaintance with them. For example, they had learned that ice could be reliably expected in regions where a strong white glare could already be seen on the horizon from afar. However, the ice was not always white. Often, particularly near the surface of the sea, it exhibited a beautiful sapphire or, more accurately, beryl blue coloration. This coloration, without doubt, was merely the reflection of the water. Occasionally, this color appeared as high as 20 to 30 feet above sea level. In such cases, it likely resulted from seawater particles hurled high onto the ice during storms and subsequently trapped in crevices by freezing temperatures.
The blue color of icebergs is caused by the unique properties of the ice and the way it interacts with light. Over time, snow compresses into dense ice under immense pressure, squeezing out air bubbles and creating a compact structure. When light passes through the dense ice, lower wavelengths like red and yellow are absorbed more strongly, while shorter blue wavelengths are scattered and reflected. This gives the ice its characteristic blue hue. The purer and denser the ice, the more vibrant the blue appears, making it a stunning visual marker of ancient, compacted glacial ice.
Frequently, they also noticed various shades of white on large icebergs, arranged in layers 6 to 12 inches thick. This phenomenon suggested that such massive ice formations were partially enlarged over time by snowfall. Since snowfalls varied in type, sometimes fine, sometimes coarse-grained, or in light feathery flakes, these layers likely differed in density and, consequently, in their coloration. Although they had to alter their course eastward due to the extensive ice fields mentioned earlier, they never lost sight of their goal to explore the Antarctic Circle. Whenever the sea appeared slightly more open, they immediately adjusted their route to head further south. Initially, progress was slow due to light winds. At dawn the following day, when there was barely any wind, they used the opportunity to lower a boat and continue their studies on ocean currents and sea temperature. Additionally, they closely examined the petrels that swarmed around them, describing and sketching several specimens, which they managed to shoot as they hovered curiously over the boat. They tried to maintain a southerly course, but as the wind shifted entirely to south-southeast, they had to sail westward for a considerable stretch. The next morning, a fresh breeze carried them past various icebergs, while, in addition to their usual company of seabirds, several whales were spotted. The passengers celebrated Christmas Day with the ship's officers in good spirits, following tradition. The sailors, however, appeared entirely unfazed by the dangerous proximity of surrounding icebergs and spent the holiday amid wild revelry and drunkenness, as though such festivities were the day's primary purpose. The following morning they sailed through extensive pack ice, some of which appeared dirty and melting. That evening, the setting sun created an extraordinarily beautiful sight. Its rays turned the peaks of a western iceberg into sparkling gold and bathed the entire mass in a dazzling crimson glow. On the 27th, a complete calm allowed them to lower a boat for a hunt, targeting penguins and petrels. Although the penguins proved elusive, they at least entertained the crew with their swift and varied movements. They would dive, stay underwater for an extended period, resurface, dive again rapidly and repeatedly, and eventually shoot off in a straight line until they were out of range, forcing the hunters to abandon the chase. Eventually, they approached one penguin closely enough to fire. Despite hitting it with buckshot more than 10 times during a relentless pursuit, they ultimately had to kill it with a bullet. When they finally caught the penguin, it became clear why the buckshot had bounced off its feathers. The bird, which was a mix between a bird and an amphibian, had thick, dense feathers. These feathers, arranged like overlapping scales, provided excellent protection against the cold and wet environment of the water, where it spent most of its time. Additionally, nature had given the penguin a thick skin and a layer of fat, making the perpetual winter of this harsh climate more bearable. The rest of its body was equally well adapted. It had a broad belly, legs positioned far back, and flipper-like wings, perfectly designed to move its bulky body smoothly through the water. The penguin they examined weighed 11.5 pounds or 5.2 kilograms. The blue petrels, which they saw everywhere across the vast ocean, were no less well equipped for the cold. Like penguins, they had dense feathers. Each root produced 2 feathers, one regular feather and one down feather, nested together to form a warm, insulating layer. As these birds spent nearly all their time in the air, nature had given them strong, long wings. They observed them over 700 nautical miles, or 1,296 kilometers, from land between New Zealand and South America. This distance would have been impossible without their robust bones, strong muscles, and wing length. Because these birds spread so far across the ocean, they seemed capable of surviving long periods without fresh food, much like other predators among birds and mammals. However, some observations contradicted this assumption, even as other evidence supported it. Whenever they shot one of the birds, it regurgitated a large amount of thick, slimy food, freshly digested. The other birds devoured this regurgitated mass with a ravenous appetite, indicating prolonged fasting and hunger. This suggested the presence of various mollusk species in the icy seas, which surfaced during calm weather to provide food for these voracious birds. These small observations were a welcome distraction amidst the monotony of their voyage. Surrounded by thick fog, constant rain, hail, and snow, they endured freezing temperatures, even during the peak of summer. They navigated through countless icebergs, always at risk of collision. Their daily diet consisted solely of salted provisions, which, combined with the cold and damp, disrupted their physical well-being. These hardships inspired a deep longing for a more hospitable environment and milder climate. Fortunately, the sailors, who had departed England as healthy and robust men, remained in good spirits and free from scurvy. This was undoubtedly due to the preventative measures they had taken. Chief among these were bouillon cakes, gelatinous concentrated meat broth, and sauerkraut, both of which were supplied in large quantities. Every crew member received a measured portion. The bouillon cakes, known in England as portable soup, were made from fresh beef, bones, and scraps, boiled down to a thick, glue-like consistency. Once reduced, the mixture was poured into molds, forming cakes resembling carpenter's glue in appearance and hardness. These cakes could be stored for years if kept dry and free from mold. On long journeys, especially at sea, where fresh meat was scarce, they proved immensely practical and beneficial. Just 1 or 2 ounces, dissolved in hot water, produced a nourishing and robust broth for one person. These cakes were sold by the pound at affordable prices, as bones and scraps could be used to make them. Only 2 or 3 of their crew, who had underlying health issues, were unable to avoid scurvy. One of them, a carpenter named George Jackson, was afflicted just 10 days after they departed from the Cape. His gums began to decay, and his teeth became so loose they tilted sideways. A remedy made from carrot marmalade, which had been highly recommended as a preventative measure against scurvy, was tried on him. However, it only served to regulate his digestion without alleviating his condition. The ship's surgeon, Mr. Patton, then began treatment with fresh wort, a boiled malt infusion. This remedy gradually restored the carpenter's health over the course of a few weeks. His teeth regained stability, and his gums appeared almost as if new. Nevertheless, the underlying cause of his illness, a predisposition to poor health, persisted. As a result, he had to continue consuming the malt infusion even after the treatment concluded, which effectively protected him from further scurvy-related issues. They could not praise the effectiveness of malt highly enough. It was, in their view, an essential remedy that ought to be stocked on all long sea voyages. However, they cautioned about the importance of keeping it dry and free from mold, as exposure to moisture significantly reduced its medicinal properties. This was a lesson they learned toward the end of their journey.
This concludes part 8 of Georg Forster's journey around the world aboard the HMS Resolution under the command of James Cook. I have linked a map of the locations of this episode in the show notes. For those who would like to see the locations of the journey around the world on the present day, I recommend my YouTube channel, Voyage to Go. There I visit the places from Georg Forster's travel narrative and try to uncover traces and connections between today and the past. So that was episode 8 of our journey around the world with Georg Forster, Captain Cook and the Resolution, on which we will continue our travels together in the coming weeks. I hope we can travel a little further together, because life is a journey, being part of it is everything.